and a white woman was to have an altercation, the cop gonna say, well, it's okay for her. But for me, all she got to say is, oh, he done touched my breast, he done touched my booty, and that go to wildfire.
Well, the actor you just saw is creating quite a stir. The New York Post's Linda Stasi says Brown not only holds his own, but nearly blows the other actors out of the box. Wow. We'll see if he admits to that. David Brown Jr. is here with director Bob Balaban, who fought to put him in the spotlight.
Absolutely.
You were doing this off-Broadway. All of a sudden, you found yourself in the movie.
Absolutely.
With some amazing actors.
Right. But first, I got to also thank Mr. Henry Schleif because, you know, of course.
Good move.
Yeah,
good
I do. I have to thank him and Bob and, of course,
boss,
Eric and Jessica, because that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah.
He's been doing workshops of this thing for, what, 5 years ago you started?
5 years, yeah. So I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and the payoff has just been wonderful. I mean, I did not expect this. So.
How different was it filming this than doing?
Well, you tell. How did you think, David?
How good a director was he?
I mean, come on, he's legendary. But I mean, it's weird going from like a live audience and then like playing to like a little poll. You know, I mean, it's just different. And I mean, you know, the dynamics of film and acting and theater acting, and it's just, you know, it's worlds. I can't really explain it. I'm really nervous about it. I can't talk about it. But it's
pretty excited about the reviews you're getting.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Well, it's very different to suddenly be alone in a room with the camera.
Yeah.
And in fact, I found that a number of our characters, Brian Dennehy had done the play, actually Susan Sarandon did the reading the first time, Aidan Quinn had done the play a number of times. I found it was in some ways more difficult if you had done the play to come in and go, okay, we got to throw the play away. This isn't a play anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
These are now real people by themselves. Different way of approaching things.
Yeah. Did you have to work on the emotion? Because the emotion, I think, is probably something that you feed off the audience in the theater, as you're talking about.
I think that does happen.
And certainly something as incendiary as this.
The interesting thing is, because The Exonerated is all true, it's not just true stories, it's testimony that we did interviews with people, we have court documents, there's literally nothing in it that wasn't said by the person who was saying it.
Yeah.
There is a certain kind of power that comes from that, and truthfully, never have we ever worked at people being emotional. Mostly what I've had to work at is with people not being emotional.
Right.
You know, when you're playing the part of Sonny Jacobs, it's very hard when you're playing Sonny Jacobs not to break down during some of the things that are happening. But if you're really that person, your goal is just transmit that message across. Hold yourself back. Don't break down. We don't want you to be aware that these are actors. We want you to really feel that you have spent time with the real people, and that's really what the brilliance of these 6 actresses have done, whether they're newcomers as David did or Susan Sarandon, who has been famous for a very long time. She disappears.
You portray, though, Robert Earl Hayes, and there is some question about him. We're going to talk about that at the end of the week, because he's gotten in trouble again.
I really don't know anything about that.
I was just going to say, does that make a difference to you? Because there are plenty of people that are not portrayed in this who have been exonerated.
I really just focus on the story at hand.
Yeah? What do you think, Bob?
I think it raises very, very interesting issues, and interestingly, when you say he's gotten in trouble again, he didn't do anything new. There was a case 18 years ago that he's now being prosecuted for, and in fact is in prison while this thing is pending. So we really can't talk about the details. We wouldn't be allowed to. But I'll tell you what has forever changed me. Whatever I hear about anybody, and certainly any of our 6 people, because I know them and I've met them and I've spent time with them, I will never again believe when I read in the paper, this happened, that happened, this didn't happen. It's much more complicated than that. We read headlines. We don't understand what really happened, whether it's in favor of the defense or the prosecution. I now have a different feeling about what I think when I read things.
Well, in part, though, is that an indictment, and I think it's fair, an indictment of the press. The way these stories are reported.
You know who I indict humanity, because we're not programmed in our busy lives to learn things with the kind of detail that you need to understand a trial. See, I don't think trials should be covered on television. Sorry, Court TV. No, but when I say that,
that's an opinion.
When I say I don't think that, it's suddenly, on the one hand, it's great that we understand about the judicial system, but the idea that we allow cameras, which I know Court TV did not go into the Scott Peterson courtroom.
Right.
Their reporting did, which is, and it should be, you know, whatever the law is, that's what we should report. But we now all think we're experts. I do the same thing. I read a story in the paper and I go, that person's guilty. Now I know. You've got to hear from all sides. And what you hear from the prosecution is, in general, evidence that supports prosecuting.
Sure.
When a prosecution comes across some difficult evidence that doesn't support the prosecution, it doesn't come up in the trial necessarily. The defense doesn't necessarily required to tell you everything they know about the person they're defending either. So people who think that by hearing about a trial you've learned about the truth, you've actually learned about how good the people's lawyers are. You know, whoever had the better lawyer, whoever expressed themselves better, and whoever was better trained and had the money to run the tests they needed to run, that tends to be who wins the trial. Truth isn't necessarily what it's about.
Well, as a prosecutor and a judge, I got to say that that is the case in situations, and it happens far too often for me. But there are a lot of good places and good people and good courts.
I'm not even saying they're bad. I'm
saying
they
do the right thing, where prosecutors do seek justice, and that which could include a dismissal and which could include a reduction of charges. But all too often we see, and every human being makes a difference. When we're talking about particularly death row, when you're killing people, it makes a huge difference.
Well, also, the problem is most people that are being prosecuted, or at least the majority of people, are guilty. And many of them are terrible. They've done horrible things. And I think if you're prosecuting, you only prosecute, you prosecute mostly bad, horrible people, day after day after day. I can see how you have a case against bad people or who seem bad.
Okay, we'll be right back.